Hello, I'm Andrew Eagles. Who are we? So we run an organisation called Sustainable Homes. We're owned by a housing association. We work out in Kingston, but we operate nationally. We've been around since 1997, providing training and consultancy services in housing. So and there we are, having won an award and having had a few drinks. We're celebrating. So some of the things we've done is we've assessed over 120 landlords on their eco-credentials. That's what Brian has already mentioned, what they're doing to mitigate and adapt to climate change across their existing stock and offices and working with residents. We train Code for Sustainable Homes assessors, and I think that's an interesting element. There's a few areas within there which touch on those things that we're talking about today. We train on lots of other areas as well, but that's most relevant for today. We carry out efficiency assessments, we develop costed investment plans for landlords. So for instance, we've just completed a piece of work for a landlord in Manchester. They've got 22,000 homes, and we're looking at how we can get them to an average EPC of D, C or B, and all of the measures that it would take to do that. So that's what's happening on mitigation, just in contrast to adaptation of existing stock. We developed a guide to the Green Deal for the Homes and Communities Agency, and we carry out this other training provision. So just in terms of the Sustainable Homes Index for tomorrow, some of the elements I could talk about during the workshop this afternoon are the findings from our 2012 and 13 analysis, where we had 38 landlords across the UK. We've now got 55 since then, so we're really growing in interest. We assess what they're doing in their offices, their strategy and management, existing homes and new build. So based on 2.4 people per home, we have just under 2.5 million people under the shift methodology. So part of what we're looking at relating to today is, are you talking to them about flood risk? Are you talking to them about overheating? Are you talking to them about how you can be more water efficient? We assess and then we share best practice with each other. So those by landlords, those are some of the organisations that I'm talking about. So here's an example. Sanctuary Housing Group, 72,000 homes throughout the UK, twice as big as the town that I grew up in. And what we do is we, this is just office carbon emissions, but we provide them quartile information on how they're performing, and then we take the best performers, in this instance office carbon emissions, and we share that with other members. So we provide training, we have a best practice group, and then we also do some research, and part of that was working with the London Climate Change Partnership, Matthew and the team, to develop your social housing in a changing climate. Are people aware of this piece of work? I've had 3-4 nods, some people saying they are very interested, so we'll get you a copy. But in this, we looked at some work carried out in the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham to 200 flats, where works were undertaken to adapt the homes to our changing climate, and we looked at how the residents felt about that and the implications. So it's important to note the other members of the project team, and I should say that this has been really quickly taken up by our members and other organisations outside of just our shift membership group. So registered social providers are really interested in this piece of work. Here are the total works costs and the amount spent on water stress, overheating and flood risk, but we should indicate that the water stress measures are actually there was no additional cost for those that were more water efficient. So that's a caveat for that small figure. So, you know, some really clear recommendations came out of this, and I'll skip to those because I know we're already running a bit over time. But this was combined with Decent Homes. We've missed a huge trick in terms of that Decent Homes program, but still we have organisations with massive programs to do works to their existing stock, and they're not specifying water efficient products. Virtually no additional cost, and what we have found in this and other work is that people are accepting of it. So I think the rest of that is not really all that. Here are the water efficiency measures undertaken. So water meter, 130 bars, low flow kitchen taps, low flow bath taps, dual flush toilet, aerator change. And in general, I'm really happy. I mean, the one thing we can say is that about 6% of people said something about the narrow bar, but you know, that's a pretty small group, and you know, there's all of those other measures that can be undertaken separate to that. So I think it's an interesting connection for when that your slides were saying sometimes people aren't doing the water step, but actually people are quite accepting of them. Overheating, obviously we've got a really big opportunity right now because we've got landlords who are specifically looking at their homes to do overcladding, and they can, if the project is right, consider other measures at the same time as the overcladding, like for instance windows, and get that covered under eco funding. But here we have a light colour measure as well, and of course carried out the condensation risk assessment. They had to relocate the satellite dishes, obviously, and they used a mast climber for access, which helped greatly with buying triple glazed windows. We used source those from Scandinavia, also helped with energy efficiency, and there was also mechanical ventilation and triple vents. So residents that were asked about this found they could easily control overheating, one person couldn't, and it was found that they had actually turned in mechanical ventilation off. So that's, you know, that old truism about education going along with the works. We're seeing more interest in that. We're currently talking to Department for Energy and Climate Change about behaviour change in relation to saving energy, but we need to do more on adaptation as well. And on flooding, non-return valves, the ground floor flats, meters and sockets were raised, and flood was in an external render. But, and this is important to note, in this instance they decided that if there was a flood, they would sacrifice the kitchens. Now, we want to be really clear and say that we wouldn't always advocate that, and part of our benefits and costs assessment didn't fully investigate some of the costs of flooding, including loss of work, you know, days off to deal with the house, moving, mental trauma associated with flooding. So although in this instance they considered this an option, we feel that there's other costs associated with flooding which people might want to, they should factor in before they consider sacrificing kitchens.
What should be sacrificing in the kitchens? Would it be the units or the cooker and that sort of stuff, or is it specific to
so it would need pretty major works afterwards. So the walls, the cupboards, and would be able to be used for, you know, quite a bit of time until that was replaced. Yeah.
Is there a short enough?
Sorry?
Is there a short enough? I'm sure would be very happy if we chose to
taking that option.
And the kitchen is almost quite expensive areas. So you've got washing machine, dishwasher, you've got the oven, as you say, and all the other units. So actually that's quite a lot of cost areas.
Yeah, and their decision, looking at the numbers, was to replace it was easier than the actual works, but part of what we're saying is that broader question. On the question of whether the insurer was informed, I could check for you. Quite difficult to get some of the information from the borough, wasn't it?
Yeah, at times. I think they must have informed them, but as you were saying, like in terms of they weighed up the costs and benefits, and we like sustainable homes, we're saying there are other issues to be considering. We wouldn't necessarily promote that either, but they were looking at the bare figures.
No, I think it's a good strategy, but I think if you said this to the ABI, they'd be mad.
Yeah.
You can't tell people to do this because you're going to be producing anything else with a huge financial burden.
Yeah.
So
essentially, the kitchen's 10,000 quid, something like that, the kitchen 45,000, 50,000 quid for replacing a home. I mean, you can see how the people are beginning to weigh cost benefits, and I can imagine crop lines crossing. I mean, I guess it might differ by circumstance.
I think it wouldn't have any risks. What level of risk for that?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I don't think they are advocating it, but they did make this decision in this instance. So, I don't think they're saying everyone should do this.
It's an interesting debate there also that was brought up about where the cost falls and who is actually putting the capital up front and who's benefiting. If they put the capital up front, then during a time of flood there's potentially less of insurance claim. So they benefit, I guess, by not having premiums, but equally if there is a flood at the moment, then as you point out, the insurance company actually is one of the greater risk. And yes, it's an interesting area to have. Sorry, Andrew.
That's all right. No, I mean that's what today's about, isn't it? In terms of recommendations, a really key point we feel is that landlords can impact on millions of residents quite quickly, and that can be a way to reduce the costs of adaptation measures generally and normalise it because contractors get used to it. So residents were accepting of adaptation works when combined with other works. A detailed design brief ensured that they were actually installed, so you needed to have that very specifically within the design brief. And the water efficiency measures didn't cost anything extra and were readily available, but lots of people still aren't undertaking them. Overheating measures can also improve energy efficiency. Triple glazed windows with integral blinds were more cost effective than external shutters, and you could potentially line up that eco funding to assist. So we felt it was important to, I'll finish with these, or shall I go on and talk about the other recommendations as well for policymakers? And there's about two or three more slides, but the flood risk assess for any refurbishments to consider refurbishing existing drainage. That was really key. Drainage systems aren't large enough, of course. Consider wheelchair access when we're raising the thresholds and repositioning the sockets and meters. And actually quite a bit of what we're talking about is about also informing and engaging with the resident, and it's important to consider that as well. So part of what we and the Climate Change Partnership would say is we need to go on and undertake more pilots like this. This was great for getting it out there. And we had, many of our members might carry out a water efficiency project with 200 people, but we haven't seen it normalised yet. And that's part of what we're doing in the SHIFT program, is saying, well, you get a lot of credit and incentives and reward for where you normalise that across your 20,000 homes or 5,000 homes. So we would say the next step is that more pilots are needed. I hope that's been useful. I'm going to stop now, but